In this video, we'll talk about additional options you have in your database. This will include things like filtering and sorting, and also how you can hide certain properties in the different views. One thing I forgot to mention in the last video is that you can actually download this database that I'm using for my tests and my explanations here in the description down below, so you can get a better feel of how this works and you can get hands-on with it. All right, so let's dive right in. The first thing we want to talk about is hiding and showing properties. So you might have noticed that in our database, where we have the table and the gallery and these other views, that we don't see all of the properties in the same way. So over here we have the rating, the type, the URL, and so on. But in the gallery, we actually only see the title of the page or the database entry. And that's because you can actually hide and show these different properties depending on your liking. So in this case, we're just not showing the properties in the gallery view. And we can change that by going into this menu over here and then going to properties. And now you see the ones that are shown in the gallery and you see the ones that are hidden in the gallery. So for example, maybe we want to add the rating as a property to the gallery. So we click on this little I button and now you see it pops up in all of these different database entries. Now we could do the same for the type, for example, and for the prep time. And now we have much more visually appealing database entries here on our page. We can actually customize these properties for every single one of our views. So if we want to have these properties in our gallery view and some other properties in the board view and some additional properties in the table view, we can actually adjust these properties however we like for each of these views. So in the table, we could also say, maybe we don't want to see the URL for all of these different recipes. So again, we could go into the menu, we could go to properties, and we could hide the URL from this page. If you make these adjustments and then leave your Notion workspace or go offline and do something else and come back to Notion the next day, these changes will still be the same. So you will still see the properties that you selected and you won't see the ones that you unselected from your different views. Another great feature in Notion is the option to filter for certain subsets of your database entries. You can do that using Notion filters, and you can set them up through this little option at the top. And here we have the option to apply quick filters. So these are like the really simple filters that are just like one-off filters and they aren't too complicated. For example, we could say we only want the recipes that have a rating of 5. And you see how this little menu pops up over here. Let's say rating should be 5. And now we only see all the entries that have a high rating in our database. So if we want to, cook something for our friend's dinner, and we want to cook something that we think is actually tastes great, then we might want to apply a filter like this to only find the recipes that we really, really like. And we also could change this to something else. So we could say, well, not the rating should be filtered. So in this case, we want to delete that. Maybe we want the prep time to be filtered. Maybe we don't have much time. So maybe we only want something that takes 15 minutes. And these are our options in this case. So filtering like this is really easy, and these filters actually stick as well. So if you add filters to a database view, they will be applied to that database view until you delete them again. So you can change them around, but the way you keep them will be how they will stay over time. Now let's also talk about advanced filters. To add an advanced filter, click on the Add Filter button again, and then go down to the Advanced Filters. And this is where we can apply multiple filter rules. So we could say we only want to see the recipes that have a prep time of either 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And so this will be the second filter rule. And they should be they should have the type of, let's say, breakfast. And now we see that we only have one element that fits this complex or more complex filtering rule. And so we can really filter through lots of data and really only get the small subset of these database entries that we want to have. Again, keep in mind that all the other recipes we have in our database aren't gone. They aren't like away. They're still in our database, but we're just not seeing them in this current view. So if you go to a different view that doesn't have all these filter rules applied, like the gallery view, for example, we still see all of our different recipes just like before, because this view obviously doesn't have any rules applied. So that's where we see everything. And in table, if we actually were to remove the filter again, so if I click on filter here, and go to these rules and then click on delete filter, you'll see how all the other recipes appear in our database again. Now, pretty similar to how filters work, we can also sort through our content in our database. And that's also a really neat feature if you want to create some visual hierarchy in your database data. So for example, we might want to sort these by ranking. So we might want to have the highest rated recipes at the top and the lowest rated at the bottom. And we could do this by going to the sort tab over here and then going to rating. And then we can say we want the rating to be ascending. That's actually true. The only problem we have here is that we messed up the order of these stars. So actually, let's go back in here and let's move this to the top, because the sort will actually take the order that you have these in this selection into account to create this sort. So now it's correct. And now we see the highest rated recipes at the top and the lowest rated ones at the bottom. Since we're at it, I also want to show you some additional options. So up here, we also have a search for just the database. So here we can search through all of our database entries. And so I could search for asparagus, for example, and then I only get the ones that actually match this text in here. So again, something you probably only need if you have a huge database, but a neat feature that Notion offers you. Sometimes you might come across situations where you have a URL or any other piece of content that is too long and doesn't fit into the space that we've given it here in the column. So we can fix this if we want to by going to the settings and then going to the layout. And here we have the option to enable the wrap cells toggle, basically. And what this does is, if the content is too long, it will wrap the content to the next line. Now, this is something you might want to do, and also something you might not want to do. So in this case, now you see it kind of just wraps the content to the second line. And if I were to make this even smaller, you see how it kind of wraps to the third line as well. So sometimes that might be something you want to do. I usually prefer the other way around. So I don't usually like to have this unnecessary space wasted. So I'd rather keep it this way, but some people like it better the other way. So you can just decide what you like better. One more thing I want to show you, just so that you're aware of it, is that many of these views have some additional features and settings that you can set, but this really depends on the view. So for example, the gallery view has some options in here. If you go to the layout, you'll see these options down here, and basically they kind of decide how the content is displayed over here. So the card preview, this is basically the content of like this image over here. And we can say we don't want to have this at all, for example. So now we don't see the images. We could say we want the page content. So this would be, the image. And we could also say page cover. And since we don't have a cover, then this won't show up. So there's nothing in here. But this is an option that you can set. And also you can change the size of these different cards. You can make it really small. And you can also make them very large, depending on what you like better. Again, just some additional options. And lastly, the fit image option allows you to basically adjust how you want the image to show up over here. I never use this, but some people like it better this way. So it will actually try to fit the image in here. But I think it just looks way better if you actually have it zoomed in and kind of take up the whole space. Just so that you know that these settings are there. Some of these other views also have these settings. So maybe go in there and try to explore what you can do with it to find out more about databases. That's it for this video. And in the next one, we'll actually take a closer look at a really interesting concept called database templates.